Welcome to In Her Voice, a podcast created for women who listen to and live by their deepest wisdom, their inner voice. This was made for you, the woman who feels pulled to more, to lead, to create, to dream, and to be a world changer. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am an inner voice coach. Join me here each week as we explore what it means to reach for your inspired potential, all while honoring your worthiness each and every day. Well, hello there. This is Kelly, and you are listening to In Her Voice. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for pressing play, for saying yes to welcoming me and my guest today into your life for the next 45 minutes or so. I have a beautiful guest today. Her name is Keira Poulsen. You're going to fall in love with her just like I did. And we're talking today all about creating sacred space. And I feel like right now, beginning of September, the kids are going back to school. We're getting back into sort of the routine that is not the summer routine, but sort of the normal school year routine. And I think this is true even if you don't have kids in school, or even if you're not centered around school. I think we just sort of have this feeling of like things are getting back to what they should be this month. And I thought, what a perfect time to think about creating a sacred space for yourself, a space where you can dive into listening to your inner voice, where you can really have a container to hold you while you journal, while you meditate, while you do yoga, whatever it is that you need to do, whatever the work is that is calling to you. When we have created a space to do that in, it makes it that much easier to do it. So let me tell you a little bit about Keira. Keira Poulsen is a mother to 5 children, an intuitive spiritual entrepreneur coach, 2-time author, and CEO of Freedom House Publishing Company. Keira helps women who feel inspired to make a huge impact in the world write transformative books of light. She teaches them how to receive their book with spiritual tools that allow for the creation of the book to come through in under 2 months' time. It is her deepest belief that women who are receiving powerful messages of truth from the divine are here to share these messages through published books and create powerful bodies of work that will impact humanity for the better. And the amazing thing about Keira too is that through a fun little Instagram giveaway, I won access to her book publishing course. And I haven't started it yet, but I feel, even after reading her bio, super excited to also be a receiver of her wisdom, personally, and also through this podcast. And, we're not talking about writing books today, but we're talking about the work that it takes to bring forth something from your soul, whatever that looks like, whatever that might be. And so I'm really excited to leave you with this interview. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. Let's get right to it. Welcome, Keira Poulsen, to In Her Voice. I'm so thrilled to have you here today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you.
Me too. And we're talking about this delicious, yummy topic of creating sacred space. And I think that this is something that many of us do already without realizing that that's what we're doing. We're not calling it sacred space. So that's kind of where I want to start with you, because this idea of sacred space, there's a lot to be said inside of that. So what does that mean, sacred space?
So sacred space for me is finding a place in your life, energetically, physically, spiritually, where you go to commune with the divine. And so it's different than just like, oh yeah, I just wrote in my journal here, or I said a prayer here. Like, there's an actual location physically that you go to daily that is completely created for this work, spiritual work, connection inwards, connection to the divine, and all things sacred.
So this is interesting because when I was preparing for this, I had actually sort of miswrote and I wrote creating a sacred space. And then when I was on your website, it was talking about creating sacred space. And I was like, oh, so this is like a different thing. It's not an actual space. But what I hear you saying is that actually, yes, it's an actual physical location plus more than that. Am I right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Exactly.
let's sort of break it down. Let's talk about the physical first because that's something that is very real and that is very tangible, and I think those things are often easier to start with. So how do we go about creating this sacred space? Does it have to be only used for that? What does the process look like?
So I want to talk a little bit about why I think having it physically there is so important. And it's because our body and our spirit work together as this team. So if you are going to go work out at the gym, you're going to put on your gym clothes, and everything inside of you is going to know, oh, I'm going to the gym. You're not going to get your gym clothes on and have this feeling that I'm going to go to a party. Like that's just, it doesn't work like that. So our physical self preps what's happening inside of us. So when we create a physical space that is dedicated to sacred space work, every time we enter it, our spirit actually wakes up. It's this thing that we're like training our spirit to show up. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, is that we train our spirit to show up to receive. And it's like everything else we do in the world, but for some reason we don't put that together when it comes to our spiritual work. So that's why I really believe creating a physical location is really important.
I love that. I love that. So let's keep going. So
Mm-hmm.
what are the components of this physical space?
So in my sacred space training, I teach people day one is to actually go into prayer and meditation and ask for the divine's help. Where could be a sacred space in my home? Now, I will tell you that there are some people who are lucky enough to say, I have a yoga room or I have a prayer room, but most of us don't. And so I like to say, ask the divine to guide you. You're going to see it. It's going to highlight in your house. It could be like that there's this corner in the middle of your living room where you're like, oh my gosh, I could put a pillow out there every morning and maybe have a little basket of my favorite crystals or whatever it is that your soul loves, and have it become the sacred space for that time. It doesn't have to be that place is always the sacred space. But when you bring the physical objects that create the sacred space every single time, in that moment, it's the sacred space. So, for example, my house is pretty small and I have 5 kids. And my old house was a lot bigger, and I actually had a full, huge walk-in closet that was my sacred space. And it was so delicious. It was so lovely. And then we traded the big house for land, which means we got a really small house, and there was no sacred space. And it was very, very sad for me. And so I started praying, and all of a sudden I saw, oh, at the very back of my pantry, it's just kind of like dead space. I could create that every morning to be my sacred space. And so I have a little, bag in there that has my crystals and my oracle cards and all the things that I love. And in the mornings I go in and it becomes sacred. And then I pack it up and it's my pantry for the rest of the day. So it doesn't have to be like this room is always sacred. But when I'm there, it becomes sacred.
I love it because that was one of the things I was going to ask you, because we have actually a pretty big house, but the place where I most love to connect with my inner voice and to do sort of my morning rituals and practices is just like in the corner of the couch where it's right by the window, fireplace in the wintertime, the sunshine streaming through in the summertime. And I have like a special blanket and the dog comes up and curls up in my lap. It really is sort of like our time, me and the dog, because she's part of it. And then it's just like the couch for the rest of the day. And so I love that it doesn't have to be like this dedicated spot. It can be wherever your soul needs it to be.
Yeah.
Even like in your pantry, which cracks
Right.
me up, by the way. Like
I know.
I don't know what your pantry looks like, but I just like imagine you sort of like crawling in there and like being on a pillow and like having your little tiny shelf. I mean, maybe that's not what it's like, but
It is. It is. And, you know, I'm super lucky that we built, actually, I call it like my sacred grove. It's a grove of 24 aspen trees that we planted. And it's tucked in the corner. We have like an elbow on our land. So when I'm in this elbow, in this grove, nobody can see me. And I have a straight shot of the mountains. And that in the summer is my sacred space. So I have like a winter sacred space where when it's really cold outside, I go in my pantry. But in the summer, I get to go out and watch the sunrise. And it does all the things for my soul.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Also, I'm going to come visit. So just
Yes.
FYI, I'm coming.
Yes.
Maybe I'll just live out there for a week.
It would be so fun.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, this also brings up something else about the sacred space is that there's flexibility to it,
Yeah.
right? Like it can be where you need it to be in that moment. It doesn't have to be in the same place every single day, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about the sort of like accoutrement that you have. So you have crystals and an oracle deck. What do all of these things and how do we sort of make our own collection of things that help us create this space?
Yeah, I love this part. So I always think back to my 16-year-old self where my mom was like, you can do whatever you want to your room. And I, no kidding, drew a full life-size butterfly on the wall, painted it in black light paint. And I mean, like, it was just like, this was my room, you know, it was like the place. And then somehow we like grow up and we get married and we have kids and we stop like having that. Like
Yeah.
that like leaves. And there's something about, oh, you get to do that to your sacred space. What are the things that light you up? What are the things that bring you joy? That when you see them, feel them, hold them, they do something that make you feel like this is my space. And that's what you put in it.
Yeah. So it can be anything.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about my space. I do have a special blanket that I like to sit on. I don't wrap up in it. I sit on it, but it's like super soft. And I actually know the person who made it. So like it feels personal. Like it feels like it, like you said, it's mine. It's mine, even if it's just for that moment. Yeah. So what else do you have in your space?
So I have this blanket. So I have a real deep connection to the Divine Mother. That's something that's been there for me for the last few years. And it always feels like her love is like a deep gold blanket. And so I found a really soft, deep gold blanket that I only use when I'm in my sacred space. So it really is connected to the sacred work and it's kind of like dedicated to it. So I always have that blanket. And depending on if I'm outside, when I'm outside, I usually have a few crystals out there. I love crystals and stones. They just, I don't know, there's something grounding about them. And then I have a soft pillow when I'm in the pantry because the ground's pretty hard. And and I have I'm a big fan of Alana Fairchild's oracle deck. So I have quite a few of hers that sometimes get put in, not always, but it's just kind of like sprinkled with all the things I love. In my old sacred space, I had paintings and just so many amazing things that just lit my soul up. One day I'm actually building a sacred space on my land, like walls, doors, floor, and then it will be covered in paintings.
Oh, like I can kind of picture it out there in your aspen grove, like just this little like she shed, but it's your like sacred spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. Okay, so we've asked the divine, or as I would say, your inner voice, and I think that those are interchangeable, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've asked where the space should be. We've sort of like intuited the things, the physical things we need there to be with us. And you know, I will add on to that. I do a lot of journaling as my sort of practice to connect with my inner voice. And I like to have a very particular kind of pen and a very particular kind of notebook. And I just get the same notebooks, and they're not fancy. They're just spiral bound, a certain brand. And I get the same pen all of the time. And I have refills for the pen, so I never have to worry about it running out. And that to me also is part of it. And that may seem silly, but for me, when I know that I have all of these things that I feel comfortable with that make it easy for me to write, then I can just really be in the moment and flow inside of whatever my inner voice is trying to say to me.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
So we have all of our things that we need. What does creating sacred space now inside of us start to look and feel like?
So this is where it gets to be really personalized. And I can share what I do as like a
Sure,
template.
I love that.
But every person has their own sacred space practice. And that's part of the journey. Part of the journey is finding out what is it that my soul needs. And I look at it, I have 5 kids and I run 2 totally full businesses. So I have a lot on my plate. And the sacred space every morning is like I get to eat dessert first every day. Before I go and make 2 different breakfasts for 2 rounds of kids and all the million things that happen in the day, the sacred space is my dessert. And if I have it first, the day goes so well because I'm not going, okay, once I've accomplished this task, then I'm going to journal. Or once I accomplish this task, then I'm going to meditate. No, everything yummy that I just love happens first. And that's what I would say is what you start doing in your sacred space. What are the things that you love to do spiritually that nourish you, that fill your cup? And that's how you begin this amazing practice. So for me, as an energetic healer, it is essential. It is a non-negotiable. Every morning I heal one chakra. And every morning it's a different chakra. It's whatever needs my help that day. Like this morning, sure enough, as an entrepreneur, if any entrepreneur is listening, yesterday I was ready to quit my job. I was like,
been there,
right? For the 900th time, right? Like it was like last night I was all, I think I have to quit.
I'm just going to burn it down. I'm going to shut the door. Yes.
Right? And so this morning I knew, today is front solar plexus. Like there's something that doesn't want me to take action that I need to clear out so that I can step back into my place of true service action, which is who I am. And sure enough, as soon as I work in there, boom, I feel like a completely different person. So healing is like non-negotiable for me. It has to happen. Prayer is really, really important to me. So I do a lot of prayer and I work with my angels. And that's a big piece to my life is working with my spiritual team. And then I love EFT. I always throw some EFT tapping in, journaling, gratitudes. I mean, let's get real. If I had 2 hours, I could fill it to the brim. But I have all these different tools and they don't always happen in the same way. Or not all of them happen every day. Healing and prayer always happens, but then the rest is kind of like, what flavor do I need today? And then I use those tools.
I love that so much. So I think one of the challenges, if someone is listening to this and they don't know what sort of quote unquote works for them or what feels good, that, you just have to try a lot of different things. And that's why it's so great to talk to people like you who say like, okay, this is what I do. And anyone who's listened to this podcast knows, journaling is my go-to. And then I do what I call worthiness reminders. That's what I start with. Those are my I ams, my affirmations, my reminders of who I am. I do gratitude and I write down what I'm proud of that, happened in the past day. And then I do straight up free journaling. And for me, a lot of it is about asking questions and receiving those answers in that way and really trusting it. And I love that each person has something that's different. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you can say, all right, well, I'm going to try this for a week or for a month or for 14 days or whatever the amount of time is that you feel led to try it. Maybe you try listening to the same meditation that many times, or you try yoga, or whatever is the thing that you feel led to try. It doesn't have, if it doesn't feel right, you don't have to stick with it, right?
Yeah. It makes me think of back in the day when I was 19, I went to massage school, and I remember how fun it was because the first little bit, they just have you take a class on every type. So one time it was aromatherapy, and then it was myotherapy, and you literally got just a flavor of every modality there was. And then you go, ooh, I love this type of modality. And then you go into the middle class, and then the advanced class, and the master's class, because you found what spoke to you. And I think that's really what we're doing here with Sacred Space. Look at it like it's like a buffet. Like, what? Try things, try them, until all of a sudden you're like, ooh, that fits. Ooh, that feels good. This is what makes me like really feel nourished and alive. And then you start implementing that all the time.
I love that so much. Okay, so I'm going to ask you for me, it's a raw question because, it makes me feel vulnerable to admit this, but I know that I'm not the only one who struggles with that. So like I said, my daily practice is journaling. And I find when I am consistently doing that, I feel good, my creativity is flowing, and that's like a sort of a pillar in my life, like feeling connected to my creativity. And when I'm not doing it on a regular basis, I feel blocked. Like the flow isn't there. And I was thinking the other day of like, why do sometimes it feels like a chore? Like there are some days I just don't want to do it. And I hear you say, oh, it's like having dessert and it's so yummy and delicious. It doesn't always feel like that for me.
Yeah.
Even though I know it helps me feel so good. And I sort of sometimes am at war with that, like, well, I don't want to today. Like I feel sort of like a toddler, like I just don't want to do that today. And I just wonder if that's normal. Like, do you ever feel like that? How can we get to this place where it's something that we look forward to every single day?
Totally. Everyone gets there, right? Like that's just, for me, the only time I'm going to get my sacred space in is if I get up by 6. Normally it's like 5. And on Sundays I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I just want to sleep. And there are quite a few Sundays that I'll skip it. And guess what? That Sunday sucks.
Yeah.
And it sucks so bad that I'm like, Keira, legit, stop that crap. Don't miss. Because it's just, I become a meaner mom. I'm super disconnected. I'm grouchy. I'm cranky. And it's because I didn't get any time with my soul and with like in this space that really does give me energy. It's like me running off of fumes when I don't. So it kind of is like that always teaches me like, no, you don't miss this, Keira. But I do change up because I have a little bit of like, I think all creatives have some level of ADD, right? Like,
yep, I do. I'm diagnosed.
Okay.
Like I full on have it.
Like I'm not diagnosed, but I'm pretty certain.
Yeah.
Because I got some serious levels of, it's such a great gift as a creative, but that means I get bored. And so I have to always keep it fresh, which means that I'm actually a big chanter. I do a lot of chanting in my sacred space. And then sometimes I don't. And I'm like, I need something new. So then it's like, okay, well, let's find a meditation that feels fun. How do we make this feel fun? And it has to be changed up. If it gets the same every single morning, that's when it starts landing in the chore area.
This is such a good, juicy part of this conversation because especially if I am a questioner. I'm not a rebel. I would like to think that I am, but I'm really not. But I am a questioner. And when I start to question things, that's when I get really annoyed by like having to do them.
Yeah.
And so, that can be sort of a signal to you like, oh, it's time to make a shift here. It's time to change it up. And I think for me, what's really interesting is I mostly do morning time, but I do notice when I start to get restless in that, I can actually shift the time. Like I'm doing the same practice, it's just at a different time, and that works for me. So it doesn't always have to be in the morning either. For those of you who are listening, you could change it up. And what really forced that for me was my kids being, sometimes they're at home for school and sometimes they're at school for school, and sometimes both of them are gone and sometimes only one of them is gone. And like it's easier for me to work around them so I can have that space that I know is not going to be interrupted. And maybe that is at 7 a.m. and maybe that's at noon, and it's never at night. Let's just be honest.
Yeah. I always say I am the most human at night. I am very far from my spirit at night. And so that is not a place I can ever do my sacred space, because I'm fully human by nighttime.
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that, but 100%. Like I hit like 4 o'clock and it's all downhill from there.
Right? Oh my gosh. I literally said this yesterday to my husband. At 4 o'clock hit and I was going to pick up a kid, and I looked at him and I go, it's just all downhill from here. I literally said those words.
We are kindred spirits, Keira.
4 p.m. on, like, oh dear. It's just so hard.
Well, and the other thing too that I've discovered, and it's been super interesting for me, because a lot of this has been predicated by the pandemic, because we all had to change our whole routines when the pandemic hit and we had to stay at home. But I shifted so much that is not going to go back to what it was before. Like I stopped working out at the gym and I work out only at home. And because I did that, then I started doing yoga in a really regular way that I wasn't before, because I just wasn't. And that has now become a huge part of sort of my daily practice. And that movement for me, the flow of that movement and just like listening to my breath, that also becomes part of my sacred space. And so I now sort of have like little pockets. Like I try to do my journaling in the morning, and then like sort of later in the morning, I do a little bit of yoga. And then kind of in the early afternoon, I try to get out for a little walk. So throughout the day, I'm sprinkling this through. So it doesn't always have to be, okay, I'm going to sit on a pillow and close my eyes and chant. Yeah. And I just say this because I want to encourage everyone to know that there's so many different ways to create the sacred space, right?
So true. I love that you sprinkle that. That's literally my goal every day. And then it never happens.
Well, it's funny because I was just journaling about this yesterday. Like, because I want to do, like you said, if I had all the time in the world, I would, journal and do gratitude and that practice in the morning. That would take me like 45 minutes to an hour. And then I would like to do yoga for 30 minutes to an hour. And then I would really like to go on an hour walk. So now that's like 3 hours.
Right. I know.
And so I'm trying to like look at my day and like, how can I fit all of this in? And some days I can, and some days I don't get any of it. I mean, that's just the reality. Like, I just want to be really frank and honest, like that this is, even when it's something that you practice intentionally every day, it doesn't have to be perfect in order to be effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfection is never progress. That is like my favorite quote that I tell myself all the time, because I am a recovering perfectionist every day of my life. Yeah. And it's like, perfectionism is never progress. So we just take one step. And if that means that everyone who's listening, if this is a brand new conversation, then just take one step and have it be that one morning you wake up and just write gratitudes. And then like 10 minutes, start with 10 minutes. 10 minutes can shift and change the whole course of your day. in 10 minutes.
I love that so much because I think especially there are a lot of recovering perfectionists who listen to this podcast, a lot of chronic overachievers. And I think that there's a tendency to be very all or nothing. Like, I am going to do 1 hour of journaling plus meditation plus whatever every single day. And that if you don't do that, then you've messed it up. Like, that it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's good enough. That revolutionized my yoga practice, actually. Because I was in this mentality like, oh, well, if I didn't do at least 30 or 45 minutes, that it didn't count.
Yeah.
And when I let go of that and then I did 10 minutes and I let that quote unquote count, which is ridiculous that I'm even saying that, but that's just the reality of how our brains work. We want it to matter, but it doesn't have to be this big, huge thing in order for it to matter.
It is. It's so hard. It's so hard being this, that type of personality, because we want so badly to make a difference and to do the things that we know we need to be doing. And that always gets in the way. And I actually have a whole class in the sacred space training where I say, like, we have to clear out the shoulds. Like, what's keeping you from getting into your sacred space? Because there's always a barrier. And every time I help people with sacred space, they get stuck right here. They get stuck in the shoulds. I should be doing this. I should be doing this. And the shoulds always keep you in stagnation. So we actually clear them out. We write through them. We burn them. It's like, no, there are no shoulds in sacred space. Sacred space is like a shouldless place. And instead, it's a place for nourishment. So that's why I say if there's like 1 or 2 non-negotiables, like every day you always journal. That's like non-negotiable for you, right? Like me,
yes,
it's non-negotiable that I pray and heal. Those 2 things are important to me. If everyone listening finds, as they start to sprinkle themselves with all these different practices, what are the things that are just non-negotiable? And that means you can get them done in 10 minutes. If you can get it done in 10 minutes, everything else is just bonus sprinkles, amazing dessert at the end. And if you have an hour one day, it's like the best day ever. But if you have 10 minutes, you still got in the things that really make the most difference for you.
Love it. Love it. I want to talk more about perfection is not progress.
Yeah.
Because that is not something I have ever heard. And I love it so much. So like what I take away from that is like, if I feel like something's perfect, I've actually gotten myself in a dead end.
Well, that's
can
good.
Can you talk to me about this? Because I love it.
Yeah. Well, so I grew up a dancer, and when you grow up a dancer with the type of brain that I have, that meant that perfectionism was the way. You had to look perfect. I was ballerina, so it was like look perfect, dance perfect, everything's perfect. So that was just like ingrained in my brain. But then I went on this journey, this spiritual journey of awakening and creating business and helping spiritual entrepreneurs and all of these things. And it was like, oh, perfectionism can't live here because I can't do this perfect, because I don't know how to do this perfect. And I could feel myself getting stuck. And then, I don't know if I heard this, I don't know, but it came into my life where it was like, perfectionism isn't progress. So let's just take one step. And every time I just took one step in the direction I wanted to go, I felt so good. And all of a sudden I really got like, oh, okay, there's no mountaintop. There's nowhere that I'm ever going to be perfect. But if I stay in action, that's the place of expansion. That's the place that actually feels really good. So last night when I wanted to quit, it was because I felt like I wasn't doing something right. And that always triggers me to want to quit. When I feel like I'm not doing it right, I'm like, I'm out.
This is so good, because I think everyone, like you're saying, when you feel like you're not doing it right, for me, it's about being good. Like if I feel like I'm not being good at something, which is, I think it's nuanced. Like I don't think it's exactly the same. Yeah. I think it's similar, but not exactly the same. But that's when I bump up against that. Like, oh, I'm so bad at this. Yeah. Why am I so bad at this? And that's when I start to get those feelings. And I think the key for me, right, is becoming curious. Like when I start to feel that, I used to think if I just practice, and again, this is like this idea of like, I'm going to practice being a recovering perfectionist so perfectly that I'm going to nail it. Right. No, that is not the way it works.
Yeah.
But because I used to think, oh, well, if I just work hard enough, I'm not going to have those thoughts anymore.
Mm.
And now I realize it's not about not ever having those thoughts. It's about when I have those thoughts, it's an opportunity for me to get curious about why I'm having those thoughts instead of quitting or instead of being angry at myself or beating myself up. It's just another chance that I get to really lean into the practice of being imperfect and of loving myself right where I am. And I can't say that in the moment I have found intense joy in doing that yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after I feel it, after I can acknowledge, oh, that was one of those times when I got to say, oh yeah, I'm not perfect and that's okay.
Yeah. I love that. I
It's
want to,
so
okay,
good.
I want to read you this because I think it's so perfect. Let me find it really fast. Um, I've been dealing with this conversation a lot. As when we expand, I feel like these things they just come up, right? Like over and over. Oh shoot, where is it? I wrote this mantra down. Anyways, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this is something I've been saying to myself every day. I am already here. There is nothing to quit because it has already been done. Everything is already here within me. It is always here. It is always here. I have always been here. I am already here.
Oh, Keira, that's so good. I have goosebumps.
So
I have
that's it.
goosebumps. I wrote some of it down, but I'm going to ask you when we're done if you will email that to me because I would
Yeah.
love to include it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to include it in my own daily practice for at least a small time because I love that. I am already here. I think another image that I use frequently because I used to do triathlons. And so like I raced, right?
Yeah.
Is that there is no finish line. You know, like we think that we're going to cross this finish line and then that we're going to feel the way we want to feel. And that's not what sacred space is about. That's not what these practices and these rituals that feed us and nourish us and fill us up. That's not what this is about. It's not like we're going to get there one day. It's about being here already. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
It's
When
so good.
when that came through in my journaling, I was like, "Oh, that's like the mantra I need to say every day right now to just
Mm-hmm.
calm down the piece inside of me that's just a hustler. That's just a go-getter, do it all." And like, Kira, you're already here. Like just
Yes.
be here. It
Like
just slows it
seriously, I'm
down.
still getting goosebumps. It's so good. Well, and you mentioned this idea of channeling.
Yeah.
And this is something else that you really support people in doing as they create their space. I think people come to you who are creatives who have these ideas. And one of the things that you help people do is channel their creativity into physical form. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yes, I love it. It's so much fun. I consider myself an avid lover of birth. Obviously, I have 5 children. Birth is just so fun to me. And it's the same experience with helping women birth their ideas, their books, their programs, their products. They come with this like energetic, it's like an energetic spirit. This idea has come to them. They see it, they feel it, and they don't know how to bring it through. And I teach them through sacred space and a bunch of other spiritual tools that I use on how to strengthen their ability to receive. So it's just a muscle. And when we learn how to strengthen it, it allows us to receive and channel through the work in so much ease and so much quickness. And it's so beautiful.
So what I hear you saying really is that one of the first steps of strengthening that receiving muscle is creating that space every day. Yeah.
100%. 100%. That's where I begin. I begin in sacred space with every single client. We don't go anywhere until we've started with sacred space.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So if someone is listening and they say, I want to go deeper into this idea of cultivating that sacred space each day, how can they learn more about that from you?
Well, everyone who is listening actually is getting my 7-day sacred space training for free. And so usually it's like $22, but I'm giving you all it for free because I feel so passionate about this conversation and this space that we've created here that I want everyone here who's listening to be able to go deeper. So that's a really great way to begin. But also if people want to like work one-on-one with me, I have a mastermind with women that are all high creatives. And I also have about 2 spots that I take people in my mentorship program where we work one-on-one and we dive deep. And almost everyone who works with me actually writes a book. It's kind of, it's my magical space. Books are the magical space I play in. So everyone I work with really receives the book that they're here to write. And I have a publishing house, so then I help them publish their books. So those are all the different ways that people can take a taste with just a training, or they can just reach out to me on Instagram or email me, contact@keirapoulsen.com, and we can see what fits best for where they need to go.
I love it. So I feel like you should call yourself the divine book mother.
I love that. Yes. That feels so good.
That just got channeled through me for you. So you're welcome.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Keira, this is so amazing. And we'll have links to the course as well as your Instagram and your website on the show notes and in the podcast app that everyone's listening to. So as you're listening, you can click right on over and connect with Keira and learn more about what she has. I am going to download your course for sure because I can't wait to dive into this even more because I really love to approach all of these things with a beginner's mind. Like you never know, even if you have a practice already, you never know what you might learn or what little thing that might spark you into doing something new and amazing. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
And as always, I like to end the podcast with one of my favorite questions, and that is, in your life these days, what is your inner voice, your divine, saying to you?
I love that question. Let me sit for a second. Let me feel
Sure.
into my heart. That if anyone who's listening has this pull in their heart that they are here for more, to be more, to create more, to expand into a bigger shape than they currently are, that if they quiet down their mind, if they walk into their soul and listen in, they will always be shown the steps that need to be taken.
Yes. That's so good. It's so good. Keira, I am sad to end this conversation, but alas, we do have many children between the two of us and other things to do. Many children, many businesses, all of that. But thank you so much for being here. I am leaving this conversation with so much joy and so much inspiration, and I can't thank you enough.
Same. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
The biggest takeaway for me in that is that through having a special place, that sacred space, we can strengthen the ability to receive from our inner voice. And that is at the root of everything that I teach. The more we practice, the more we create a habit of checking in, of listening to that inner voice, the easier it becomes. Sometimes it might even be effortless if we practice enough. Not always, but sometimes. And on the flip side of that, sometimes it can be extremely difficult, especially if you haven't been connecting with your inner voice, if you haven't been doing the work that you need to do to be able to listen. And sometimes if you find yourself in that space, that is the best time to ask for help. Because this is exactly what I do. I can sit with you and help you listen. This is my superpower. And it would be my pleasure. In fact, my favorite thing to do is just to sit and listen to someone and to ask questions that help them connect to their inner voice. And so if you're feeling a little bit stuck, if you're feeling like this sounds so amazing, but like, how do you even get there? An idea hour is for you. An idea hour is where we sit together for an hour and I help you listen. And the ideas that come up and the things that your inner voice has to say to you will change your life. It really will. And this is perfect for you if you're in a state of transition or if you have questions, but also it can just be that Kickstarter, that thing that you need that says, this is the start of my practice. This is what I need to ignite the fire. And I really believe that when we create opportunities like that, it can keep us going as well. So if this sounds like something that you would love to have in your life, this, Kickstarter session with me, I encourage you to head on over to kellycovert.com/ideas and sign up for an idea hour. I would love to spend this time with you so you can really feel empowered to connect on a daily basis with your inner voice. kellycovert.com/ideas. And the link is in the show notes and in the podcast app that you're listening to. Remember this, when you are listening to your inner voice on a daily basis, you will feel more joyful. You will feel more purposeful. You will feel more satisfied. And all of those things are there for you every single day. You don't have to earn them. You don't have to hustle for them. They are there for you, inside of you, waiting. Remember this, every single day, you are worthy.